ಇಬ್ಬಂದಿ ಇಬ್ಬಂದಿಯಲ್ಲಿಯೇ ದರ್ಶನ ಕಾಣೋ
Namaskara. Shekhar Purna here. Today is 13th July 2026. The main subject of this note I have shared with my close ones many times. It troubles me that such a deeply important matter remains largely unrecognized by the masses. Driven by the strong urge to give this thought a universal perspective, I am sharing it here. Having traveled the length and breadth of various countries and gathered some life experience, I can say this with absolute certainty. There is no doubt that the sheer scale achieved by this socio-cultural and religious phenomenon will leave both you and me in absolute awe. I am yet to visit the Golden Temple in Amritsar, but I have visited Tirupati, located in our neighboring state, about 50 to 60 times. In a country where political parties continuously fail to uphold the true spirit and ideals of the Indian Constitution, Tirupati remains a place of pure wonder to me even today. Mind you, this wonder does not stem from the religious devotion or faith gained by the darshan of Tirupati Thimmappa. The vital wonder initiated by governments like those of M.G. Ramachandran or Siddha Ramaiah, which provided 1 kilogram of rice for 1 rupee to the poor, is completely surpassed by what happens every single day inside the Tarigonda Vengamamba Annaprasadam complex atop the Tirumala hills. To make this wonder clearer, let me lay out my thoughts below. Just think about it. Whether it is my family or yours, when a wedding is finalized, the first circle we invite with gifts and cards comprises our immediate relatives, followed by close friends. While extending this invitation, we subconsciously keep both our family ties and caste in mind. Without the element of caste or a sense of deep intimacy, we seldom invite anyone. At the wedding, those who attend are treated to breakfast and photo sessions, which are then publicized. We often see that our own people are seated and served first in the dining rows, followed by others, and only at the very end do the catering and venue workers sit down to eat. I am not rigidly arguing that the workers must be seated in the very first row. However, when these workers finally sit down to eat, it is extremely rare, almost non-existent, for the elders or youngsters of the host family to walk up to them and exchange a few hospitable words. It makes one want to curse oneself, thinking what a shame our household is. Typically, in a standard wedding, the number of guests dining ranges from 500 to 1,000 at most. In affluent weddings, this number might exceed 5,000. In the grand weddings of political families or film stars, we can estimate the crowd to be over 1 lakh. Furthermore, it is practically impossible for these wedding celebrations to sustain themselves for more than a day or two. Even in America, during weddings held in private venues rather than churches, it is rare for the bride and groom to remain at the venue for more than an hour or half an hour after exchanging rings. Barbecue parties do happen, but the number of attendees at such gatherings is exceptionally small. Please keep these numbers and statistics in mind as I proceed. After this lengthy introduction, I am coming straight to the core point. Without any discrimination of caste, creed, religion, poverty or wealth, certain spiritual centers in India, a country driven heavily by emotion, have successfully demonstrated what is known in English as mass feeding, carrying it out continuously for decades. Having walked through the parks of several American cities, I have witnessed sporadic bread distribution or food donation activities here and there, but I have absolutely never seen the colossal scale achieved by places like Amritsar, Tirumala or Kalsa. In the Golden Temple in Amritsar, free rotis, sabzi and other food items are distributed daily to over 1 lakh people without any charge. I have heard that on festival days, this number crosses over 2 lakh people. According to official statistics, under the single roof of the Tarigonda Vengamamba Annaprasadam complex in Tirumala, over 60,000 people dine daily and the number crosses 1 lakh during weekends. The Annadanam or food donation that takes place during the annual chariot fairs or towns in our local areas is limited to just 1 day. However, the phenomenon in Amritsar and Tirumala is not limited to one day. It runs relentlessly every single day without a break, making it a true wonder of the world. And I don't believe this wonder is limited merely to the act of donating food. Now I am coming to the real issue. Whether it is our constitution, the Dalit movement, struggles of other oppressed communities or ideologies of political parties like the Communists, Congress and BJP, the ultimate objective is to eliminate differences based on caste, religion, rich and poor, and to achieve a baseline value of human empathy and courtesy. I have dined in the mass-feeding halls of Dharmashastra, Udupi, Kukke Subramanya, Mantralaya and several other pilgrimage centers. Even in these places which are believed to be the holy abodes of the divine, such discrimination actively exists. Thus, as I mentioned earlier, it is an accepted fact that the constitutional ideals and political promises have not yet brought true equality. Even in divine spaces, discrimination persists over something as fundamental as food. However, in places like Amritsar, Tirumala or the Annapurneshwari temple in Kalasa, there is absolutely no discrimination based on caste, wealth or poverty. Everyone sits together in the same row and enjoys the meal. This celebratory spirit of equality needs to expand across the nation. Whether this is achieved through a religious framework or through constitutional and political means, if it becomes a reality, the community will finally find the balance to achieve progress and development amid all other conflicts. This must become a shared responsibility for all of us. A concluding thought, a clue to my future writings. To conclude, here is a small clue regarding my way of thinking, which I might document in detail later. When I was in America, a young Indian friend of mine said something that my young friends here in India also keep repeating. In America, there is absolutely no compromise when it comes to the dignity of labor. We have a lot to learn from America in this regard. True. However, I end this note by stating that I will demonstrate exactly where my young friends fail beyond this point. One last word. My desire to visit Amritsar remains unfulfilled. Similarly, against the backdrop of all the thoughts mentioned above, I deeply felt the urge to make a documentary and had placed this proposal before many people. Though interesting responses came by now and then, the dream of making the documentary remains unfulfilled due to the lack of financial sponsors. I live in the hope that someone might take me to Amritsar and the right sponsors will come forward. Shekhar Purna.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we are taking a look at a phenomenon that honestly completely defies modern logic.
It really does. It's fascinating.
Yeah, so our mission today is to explore how this deeply ingrained sociocultural and, religious practice in India has achieved this scale of just pure, unadulterated equality, something that modern politics and even constitutional law still completely struggle to mandate.
Right, they really do struggle with it.
And we are grounding this whole conversation in this brilliant, highly reflective essay. It's titled The Sacred Architecture of Mass Inclusivity, written by Shekhar Purna on July 13th, 2026.
It is such a remarkable piece of analysis. I mean, it looks at the concept of equality not as some, abstract utopian ideal that politicians debate in parliaments, but as a lived daily mechanical reality.
Exactly. And to really grasp the scale of what we're talking about today, I want you, the listener, to start off by just imagining something for me.
Okay, I like where this is going.
I want you to picture the absolute largest dinner party you have ever personally attended. Or maybe even hosted yourself.
Oh man, just thinking about the sheer logistical nightmare of that is stressful.
Right. Managing the guest list, the seating arrangements, the stress of making sure everyone is served while the food is still actually hot.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Now take that mental image, that bustling, crowded, slightly chaotic celebration, and scale it up. Keep scaling it up until you aren't just feeding a large family or even a massive wedding party.
You're feeding an entire small city.
Yes, an entire small city, every single day, relentlessly, without any pause, and without charging a single cent. Okay, let's unpack this. Because to understand this massive achievement, the essay actually starts us off somewhere much more intimate.
And honestly, a lot more uncomfortable.
Yeah, it starts with the anatomy of a standard invitation.
Which is really the baseline we have to establish here. I mean, to truly appreciate the miracle of radical inclusivity, you first have to understand the default state of human exclusivity.
Right, the way we normally operate.
Exactly. When we celebrate, we filter. And a typical wedding serves as, like, the perfect microscope for this behavioral quirk.
Let's look at the actual numbers for a second. A standard wedding might host somewhere between 500 to 1,000 guests.
Yeah, which is already huge.
But if it's a highly affluent family, you might see that jump to 5,000 plus. And when we look at massive political dynasties or, major film star families in India, you are looking at crowds of over 1 lakh.
Wait, 1 lakh? So that's 100,000 people?
100,000 people gathering for a single event.
It is just wild.
It is. But the size of the crowd is actually kind of a distraction from what's really going on beneath the surface.
What's fascinating here is the subconscious mechanism at play when those guest lists are actually drafted. The essay points out that when we extend invitations, we're quietly, almost invisibly, keeping our family ties and our social standing in mind.
Yeah, we're definitely filtering.
Right. And in the specific cultural context of this essay, that heavily involves caste alignment. Without that element of caste synergy or some pre-existing sense of deep, verified intimacy, people seldom invite anyone outside their established bubble.
It's basically like setting up a velvet rope at a club, right? Except we're doing it around our own dining tables.
Oh, that's a perfect analogy.
Even in our happiest, most celebratory moments, we are actively building walls. You really have to ask yourself, looking at your own life, who makes it past your velvet rope and who doesn't?
It's a tough question to face.
And the craziest part is that this invisible boundary doesn't just stop at the front door of the wedding venue.
No, not at all.
Right.
It extends right into the dining hall itself. It dictates the entire choreography of the celebration.
Right, because when the feast begins, there's this universally understood hierarchy of consumption.
Oh, totally.
The host's own people, like the immediate family, the most important guests, they are seated and served first.
Then the extended circles, right? The acquaintances, the colleagues.
Exactly. And then at the absolute tail end of the line, long after the main celebrations have peaked and the important guests have gone home, that's when the catering staff and the venue workers finally sit down to eat whatever is left over.
And that physical separation there reflects a massive psychological distance. The essay highlights how incredibly rare it is for the host family to, walk up to those workers while they are eating and exchange even a few hospitable words.
It paints a really raw picture of that moment. The realization of that alienation sparks this deep feeling of shame for the author.
Yeah, a sudden, really uncomfortable awareness.
Like, what a shame our household is that we can't even speak to the people feeding us.
It's powerful.
But why is that? Why is it that human nature just defaults to this rigid hierarchy the second we sit down to break bread?
Well, because breaking bread is arguably the most intimate communal act humans engage in. Throughout history, sharing food implies a shared status.
Ah, I see.
By strictly controlling who we eat with and in what specific order, we aren't just managing a catering budget, right? We are constantly reaffirming our social standing.
We're basically drawing out our social circles on a plate.
Exactly. It's an invisible architectural blueprint of society manifesting right there in the dining hall. And I should point out, this isn't exclusively an Indian phenomenon, even if the specific mechanics of caste are unique to it.
Absolutely not. The essay actually mentions the American context, too.
Right, the barbecues.
Yeah, pointing out that post-wedding gatherings or, backyard barbecues in the U.S. are incredibly small, fiercely protected circles. The velvet rope is a universal thing.
It really is.
And more importantly, all of these private celebrations, no matter where they happen in the world, are fleeting. You can only sustain that level of expenditure and exclusion for a day or two before the resources run out and everyone goes home.
Which brings us to the stark contrast at the very heart of our mission today.
Yes, the pivot.
We are moving from the closed loops of private, temporary exclusion to a scale of public, relentless inclusivity that genuinely challenges our basic understanding of human cooperation.
Here's where it gets really interesting. The sheer logistics of what happens at the Tarragonda Vengamamba Annaprasadam complex in Tirumala.
The scale is just, it's hard to wrap your head around.
And the author hasn't just, read about this on Wikipedia. They've visited 50 to 60 times. They have deeply studied the mechanics of this operation.
And the numbers they share are almost difficult to process.
Under this single roof, over 60,000 people dine daily.
Wow.
And on the weekends, that number crosses 100,000 every single day. And then you look at the Golden Temple in Amritsar.
Oh, the langar there is famous.
They're serving hot, fresh meals, rotis, sabzi, lentils, to over 100,000 people daily, entirely for free. On festival days, that skyrockets to over 200,000 people.
If you contrast this with standard public food distribution, say Walking through a massive park in an American city and seeing a localized charity handing out sandwiches. The scale here isn't just bigger.
Right.
It operates on a fundamentally different plane of existence entirely.
Exactly. It's not a one-off anadannum or food donation tied to, like, an annual town chariot festival. It is a relentless daily marvel.
Relentless is the perfect word for it.
But wait, I have to push back here for a second.
Sure, go ahead.
Because when you talk about feeding hundreds of thousands of people, my mind immediately goes to the state. Wouldn't a massive government welfare scheme do this better?
That's a really fair question.
I mean, the essay mentions specific political initiatives, right? Like the programs under leaders such as M.G. Ramachandran or Siddaramaiah. They rolled out schemes providing 1 kilogram of rice for a single rupee to the poor.
Yes, those were huge initiatives.
Those are massive state-sponsored attempts at food security that impact millions of people. So isn't that a vastly superior mechanism for equality than a temple kitchen?
That is exactly the tension the essay explores. And it's a brilliant distinction to make. Governments absolutely have the infrastructure to distribute cheap raw materials.
Right.
But providing a kilogram of rice for a rupee is an act of resource distribution, not an act of social leveling.
Oh, what do you mean by that?
Think about the actual mechanism of it. The government gives you the heavily subsidized rice, but what do you do with it?
You take it home, I guess.
Exactly. You take it back to your own segregated neighborhood behind your own velvet rope, and you cook it and eat it strictly with your own socioeconomic class.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
The state has addressed your hunger, sure, but it has done absolutely nothing to address your social alienation.
I see. It's like the difference between receiving a government stimulus check in the mail versus being invited to a state dinner.
That is a great way to put it.
One just gives you capital, the other actually changes your status in the room.
Precisely. What makes the temple complexes vastly superior in this specific context is that they force shared consumption.
They don't just hand you the raw materials and send you away.
No, they require you to sit down in the dining hall, literally shoulder to shoulder with total strangers, to consume the meal together.
So what does this all mean? Because this brings up a massive contradiction in the essay that we really need to dig into.
Yeah, it's a big one.
We are talking about these temples as the ultimate engines of equality. But if they are all considered holy spaces, why does that velvet rope still exist in some temples but completely vanish in others?
This is perhaps the most crucial observation in the entire analysis. The essay does not give religion a free pass here.
Not at all.
It points out the deep, structural hypocrisies that exist within many spiritual spaces. Simply declaring a building sacred does not magically erase the hardwired human tendency to stratify and divide.
The examples provided are pretty jarring, honestly.
They really are.
The essay details dining in the mass feeding halls of several other major pilgrimage centers, places like Dharmasthala, Udupi, Kukasubramanya, and Mantralaya. And the system there is completely segregated.
Segregated how?
Food is served in 2 entirely separate sections, one exclusively for Brahmins and another section for everyone else.
Right. And for you listening, to understand the cultural weight of this, we really have to look at how caste operates around food.
It's very complex.
In traditional hierarchical frameworks, sharing food isn't just about socializing. It's deeply tied to concepts of ritual purity and pollution.
Right.
Historically, the belief was that eating with someone of a lower caste, or even eating food prepared by them, would spiritually pollute you.
So by maintaining separate dining lines, these specific institutions aren't just organizing, like crowd control.
No, they're actively validating and institutionalizing that millennia-old social hierarchy.
They are essentially saying, yes, you are all devotees, but you are absolutely not equals.
Exactly. They uphold the invisible architectural blueprint of the wedding guest list, just on a grander religious scale.
Which makes what happens at Amritsar and Tirumala, or the Annapurneshwari Temple in Kalasa, seem even more revolutionary by contrast.
It's a night and day difference.
In these specific places, the essay notes, there is absolutely zero discrimination based on caste, wealth, or poverty.
The millionaire sits on the bare floor right next to the daily wage laborer. The CEO sits next to the person who cleans the streets.
Wow.
They eat the exact same food at the exact same time, served by volunteers who could literally be from any walk of life. The ego is entirely stripped away at the door.
If we look at how this functions mechanically, it's mind-blowing. It's like comparing an open source network to a gated community.
Oh, I like that comparison.
In a gated community, you spend half your resources just verifying who is allowed inside. At the Golden Temple, the system works so efficiently precisely because they don't waste any energy filtering people.
Right.
The absolute lack of a velvet rope is what actually allows them to serve 200,000 meals in a single day.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, we can see how this radically successful model of inclusivity intersects with the broader political landscape in India.
How so?
Well, the essay maps out the stated objectives of massive institutional forces. It points to the foundational ideals written right into the Indian Constitution.
Maybe.
It highlights the decades-long struggles of the Dalit movement. It even lists the core promises of vastly different political parties, like the Communists, the Congress, and the BJP.
Which covers the whole spectrum.
Exactly. And I want to be incredibly clear for our listeners here. We are merely mapping the ideological framework presented in the source material. We are not endorsing any of these specific political groups or their platforms.
Right, we were just looking at the shared theoretical goal that they all claim to be chasing.
Yes, exactly. And that shared goal, whether it's driven by constitutional law, social justice movements, or political manifestos, is the elimination of societal differences based on caste, religion, and economic class.
Right.
They all exist, ostensibly, to achieve a baseline value of human empathy.
But the brutal reality is that they struggle to enforce it. You can draft all the constitutional laws you want, you can win elections on promises of equality, but you cannot legislate a host at a massive wedding to sit down and happily share a meal with the catering staff.
No, you really can't.
Politics can change laws, but it has a very, very hard time changing human instinct.
Which is exactly why the massive feeding halls at places like Tirumala and Amritsar are so profoundly important.
They actually do it.
Yes,
Yeah.
they take the theoretical political goal of absolute equality, something entire governments consistently fail to manifest, and they execute it in reality hundreds of thousands of times a day.
It's a systemic triumph of empathy. It proves that a society without these aggressive dividing lines isn't just some utopian pipe dream. It actually works.
It functions logistically, mechanically, and socially.
And this leads to the essay's ultimate argument. Right?
This celebratory spirit of equality needs to expand far beyond the walls of these specific temples and bleed into the broader nation.
It can't just be isolated.
If this baseline of genuine shoulder-to-shoulder human empathy becomes the standard, rather than the exception, the community can finally find the balance needed to progress through its other conflicts.
It really reframes how we think about social progress entirely. And the essay brings this down to a very personal modern context at the end,
It does.
contrasting this Indian phenomenon with an observation about the West.
It's a fascinating setup for a future debate. The writer mentions a conversation with a young Indian friend who boldly claimed that America has absolutely no compromise when it comes to the dignity of labor.
Suggesting India is lagging far behind in that regard, right?
Exactly.
And the response is so nuanced, the author agrees partially, but clearly plans to write more about where this perspective falls completely short.
Yeah, they leave a little breadcrumb there.
Let's dig into that for a second. What is the fundamental difference between the American concept of the dignity of labor and the radical inclusivity of the Golden Temple?
It really comes down to the difference between economic respect and social equality.
Okay, unpack that.
In the American context, respecting the dignity of labor often just means recognizing a worker's economic output. You tip the waiter well. You respect the plumber's skill. You acknowledge they are working hard to earn a living.
Right, but at the end of the day, they are still the waiter and you are still the customer.
Exactly.
You aren't inviting them to pull up a chair at your private backyard barbecue. The velvet rope is still very much intact. You are just being polite to the person standing on the other side of it.
That's spot on. Respecting labor does not automatically obliterate the social hierarchy. But when you sit on the floor of the langar at Amritsar, the person serving you the hot roti might be a billionaire performing volunteer service.
Oh, wow.
And the person eating right next to you might be entirely destitute. The economic roles are completely obliterated by the architecture of the space.
That is a level of inclusivity that goes far beyond just respecting labor.
It really is. Which makes the final note of this essay so bittersweet.
Yeah, it really does.
Because for all this brilliant analysis, for all this deep understanding of how massive systemic empathy functions, the author reveals a deeply unfulfilled dream.
Right. Despite writing so powerfully about the Golden Temple in Amritsar, The writer admits they have never actually been there themselves.
Yeah.
They have this desperate, driving ambition to visit and produce a documentary about this massive phenomenon of mass feeding and pure equality.
But they can't get the funding.
Yeah.
They've pitched the idea, they've received some polite interest, but they lack the financial sponsors to make it a reality.
So the essay ends with them just holding on to this hope that someday someone will help them document this daily wonder.
It perfectly encapsulates the exact societal flaw the essay is diagnosing, if you think about it.
How so?
Well, think about the billions of dollars spent every single year on exclusive velvet rope weddings designed to reinforce our closed social circles.
Oh, I see.
Yet finding the resources to document and celebrate a daily, barrier-breaking miracle of human equality is an uphill battle. We easily fund our divisions, but we really struggle to fund our unity.
That is a phenomenal point and a perfect place to land the plane for this deep dive. We've covered a massive amount of ground today for you to think about.
We really have.
We started by looking at our own private celebrations, those velvet ropes we set up to quietly enforce our social hierarchies, where the people serving us are relegated to the shadows.
Right.
And we compared that to the staggering, awe-inspiring mechanics of these massive dining halls, where hundreds of thousands of strangers willingly strip away their egos and sit shoulder to shoulder as pure equals.
It proves that true equality isn't just a political talking point.
Exactly. It is a logistical reality that is happening right now.
This raises an important question for you to mull over as you go about your week. We so often think of bridging massive societal divides as this, insurmountable legislative or political challenge.
It feels too big to solve.
It does. But if an institution can successfully strip away all markers of caste, class, and wealth simply by changing the physical and social architecture of a dining hall,
Yeah.
what other seemingly impossible social divides in our own communities could be dismantled if we simply changed how and with whom we eat?
It is a powerful thought to leave you with. Think about the invisible blueprints you are operating under. Think about your next dinner party. Who is on the guest list? And more importantly, why aren't the others? Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.